our next song, which is Repentant by Danny Baranowsky from The Binding of Isaac. Disclaimer. This is an analysis track. As an analysis video, we're going to be pausing a lot because I'm going to be trying to explain what I am catching. Isaac and his Isaac lived alone, a small Isaac on an Isaac. Isaac kept to himself, drawing Isaacs and playing with his Isaacs, while his Isaac watched Isaac broadcast on the other Isaac. Life was Isaac, and they were both Isaac. That until Isaac's Isaacs heard an Isaac from Isaac. There you go. Let's hear it. Let me just from the... So we have several synths going on at the same time. Big contrast from what we've just heard, because we just analyzed an orchestral composition, and this one is a bit more, I guess, not smaller, but just smaller scale. Is the Caves or Depths theme? Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense, because you have the harmony being kept at several layers, with the high end kind of just keeping the chords. You have another... This one's interesting. Having the percussion, the rhythm, being kind of drowned, being kind of still that same synth, with very, very subtle drums. Very, very subtle electronic drums. I like this. So yes, you have the bass, you have the high end doubling, which means they're just playing the same thing at different octaves. And with the drums being on that lower end, it gives more emphasis on the lower end, which gives that sense of you're looking downwards. I like it. Okay, we have a main melody. Okay, so we had a new melody come in right in the middle, doing counterpoint. Counterpoint being the idea of multiple melodies playing at the same time that are not the same. So counterpoint stands for point against point, and I like it because it adds this melody going downwards while the other one is kind of going in circles. This one is going downwards, descending further. As I said, it's caves, depths. You're kind of going downwards, and it's building towards something. Let me back a couple of seconds. Okay. So now the drums clear up. The drums are kind of phased away. Now they're finally coming out in the foreground. I like it. It's a good angle to have. It's kind of like you opened the door kind of thing. This is the first few 25 seconds or so, we're kind of like opening the door. Now we're in. I like the synth going over here. Strings above. Now we have a similar melody to that slow chord progression we had at the beginning, but now it's faster. That means that is our motif. Our motif, of course, motif is the smallest version of a musical idea, kind of like a concept. You know, if you were to reduce the Lord of the Rings to a single word, what would that be? That's kind of what a motif is. And it's something that you can then explore in more depth and more detail. The most famous motif of all time, of course, being Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Bum, 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 bum. That's the entire motif, and Beethoven made a 40-plus minute symphony out of just that, and he hit it on a bunch of his other music ever since he made it, because he realized he made one of the greatest musical seeds of all time, and he put it to good use. Let's continue. Okay, so we have now going farther in the higher end. Yeah, we have strings now in the background while we still have these synths kind of bubbling in the top. We have the drums down below. I like how this still creates kind of an oppressive feeling. I think it's the bass. Let me check again. It's the bass. It's very subtle bass. Because the bass is only keeping up with the harmony. No, the bass is doubling what the strings are playing, but a lot quieter. That's what's going on here. So the strings are distracting you from what the bass is doing, and the bass is giving you this oppressive feeling about this whole thing, because the rest of this, if you were to remove the bass, everything would just be completely fine up above. JP, welcome to today. No, I wanted to hang out a little bit before. I am holding back a little bit. Tomorrow we might, though. Tomorrow we might just straight up go into Clear Obscure. But let's continue. Okay. Keyboard with a kind of a piano organ. So we reduce the scale, contrasting theme number 2. The strings are still there. Is the bass still there? Let me... He took away the bass. Bass is back. But the bass is a different instrument now. We bring back those like muffled drums that we have earlier, the muffled percussion rhythm, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Because it's still giving you that concept. Because at the start, we had it in the intro. It gave you that sense of being drowned out, that oppressive feeling without having the bass pushing onto you. Then we added the bass with the big development, and now we're back to that initial thing. But now we have this like keyboard organ, almost like an organ sound to this, building up on it. The strings phase in and out in 40. Yeah, it was nice. So yeah, we go back to synths over here. Oof. Super G's, but it's because they breakdown. We also to watch. Alright, Poet. We might just do that for you. Because it's Expedition 33. Alright, some percussion. And now he's playing that second melody. Let's see if he does it again. Yep, that second melody that we heard that built towards the other thing, and... Hi, John. Alright, thank you for pointing the box. Catch you around, man. And we go back to this theme, to the main theme. Once again, really beautiful, with the arpeggiation in the middle. And this time... You know, we've had this concept of the flying melody. We've had that a lot. We've kind of had the concept of burrowing melody. And in this case, the strings are really quiet. The strings would be doing a flying melody here. The strings would be doing a flying melody here. A flying melody, what I mean is, you have a very busy lower end, very busy bass, percussion, all of this. And then up above, you have a melody... relatively simple, flying above everybody else. But in this case, it's so quiet and so drowned out that it almost feels like it's not there, but it should be. I really like what Danny's doing here. And now that we bring the melody forward, the busy bass is no longer there. It's just simple percussion. And now the upper melody is a little bit busier. Oh, this is beautiful. Back to just these two. With the strings fading in and out, you did mention that, yeah. For dramatic effect. This is really well made. This is really, really well made music. Ooh. Okay. So yeah, we're adding that extra glitchy percussion drums into that. And we added a couple of more things. Let me hear it again. Yeah, we added a couple of extra synths there. A couple of extra effects, some extra doublings. To add more depth to it. Because at this point, we have only really done 2 themes here. We've only had, no, three themes, I would say, if we count the intro. We only had three themes, three musical ideas, and we are 3 minutes 20 seconds into this piece, and I think he can just keep cycling back and forth between these two, and just adding, removing elements to each of them, and he's got a really, really solid 5-minute track over here. This structure sounds to me like an ABABA, which in classical music, it's a very simple concept. In classical music, and in most things, you will have a structure, which is which parts or what parts are in your piece. And usually you will have your main idea being idea A, and your second idea being B. So, in classical music, you can have an intro, and a lot of times you will have an intro, but that doesn't really affect the idea of the A and B. And usually, one of the earliest structures in music that we have is the ABA, which is just 3 sections. You have one section, you can have an introduction to this. You have a section number one musical idea. Section number 2, a contrasting idea that still builds upon the first idea, but isn't exactly the same and has enough contrast. And then back to either A or what we call A prime, which is a variation of that first idea without going too far into that. And there are many things you can do. For example, we've heard songs that are the ABACA, which is the rondo. And the ABACA, you can go A, so you have idea number 1, you then play idea number 2, then you do idea number 1 again, reiterate that, you jump to idea number 3, you go back to 1, 4, 1, 5, and you can just continue going forward with the rondo like that. This one, however, I think this one might just be AB, A prime, B prime, A double prime, B double prime, so on and so forth. I think that's what we're seeing here. Because we saw an introduction which was really beautiful, which had the motif of idea A. It had it very hidden because it was basically the melody as chords. And then we jumped into A and B, and then a variation of A, then a variation of B. Now we're back to another variation of A, and another variation of B, and let's see if it keeps going. So that's that second melody that we heard in the intro, that kind of breaks everything apart. There you go. Now on the upper end, with a couple of very minor changes. Back to idea A, now with the drums sped up. But this is now A double prime. We're in A double prime. We're adding very minor elements, very minor changes to the structure, but because it's new and it's substantial enough, it still doesn't shy away from being this. We might have an intermission here. So, it was gonna fade out? We'll see then. End of... Back to B. This variation of B, I think it might be the same. So this could be a variation of a rondo. No, the other idea is way too similar. So we're going A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, and we just keep building up on the variations. This one, however, is still kind of the same. So it might be... Okay, so what I'm picking up here is that we are doing a very strange version of the rondo. We're taking the concept of the rondo and we are inverting it. So instead of having A, B, A, C, A, D, A, whatever, we have A, which was the main idea. We had an introduction. We had A, then we had B, then we had A with a variation, Then we had B with a small variation, then A with a second variation, and then we just jumped back to the same B again. And we're just... So instead of this being like this, it is... Oh, this is clever. So what we have is A. You have an intro. A, B, A prime, B prime, and then A prime plus 1. And then we're just jumping back and forth between these two. We're going back to A prime plus 1, B prime. And then A prime, A, that one previously plus 1. Back to A prime. Then A, that plus 1. And then back to B prime. So, yes. And he's ending this on the B prime. Which is a variation of the intro. And he fades it out, which, you know, fine, considering that it is video game music, fade outs are sometimes inevitable. But there you go. Very interesting structure, very interesting sound. Overall, the vibe was really good. I liked it. There was Repentant by Danny Baranowsky from the Binding of Isaac soundtrack. Really good stuff. Fairly minimalist. Considering there were, maybe 8 layers of music total? Which, for a game soundtrack, it's not that much. Like, don't forget, back in the NES days, when the first Super Mario existed, that was 3 layers of music, because that's how much 8-bit computing could do. This was maybe 8 or 9 layers. Not that many layers, and still he managed to do really, really good work with these. Maybe, I would say less than 20 layers, which for a video game soundtrack is not that much. So really, really good stuff. I enjoyed it. Good stuff. But anyway.